I've been at RDSolutions since 2016. My career started kind of in the marketing world, worked for some of the biggest marketing agencies. I've mostly focused on B2B technology solutions. I've kind of come in and out of some sports stuff over the years, but I was attracted to the company when I did because it was at this time of real kind of innovation within the space. Our company had been around since 1988. And so obviously, everything e-commerce related was not a thing then. So it was all in-store collections. And so we were the go-to provider for any sort of in-store competitive intelligence for retailers and brands. And so it was in 2016 when I joined is right as the web was starting to become relevant certainly from a grocery perspective. It was just a really great opportunity because it was a real transition for the company to, a lot of what we did in store sort of went to the web, but in store hasn't gone away, which we'll speak to. So it's just a great opportunity to kind of help get in at the point of reinventing a 25-year-old company of sorts. At a really high level, I think about it as sort of four key buckets, if you will. And the first is the data. Like if you don't have good data coming in, nothing good's coming out. Junk in, junk out. And so we've got a massive omnichannel data operation. We've got thousands of people doing 8,000 to 10,000 in-store visits every week. We've got one of the largest web scraping entities in the space by far. And so it all starts with timely and accurate data. From there, we move on to how do we make that competitive data more relevant to our client. And so there's private label items. And so how do you create matches between two different brands, private label, selling the same item in a different size? And so you just need different mechanisms to enrich and transform that data into something that's going to be more meaningful to the client. And so that's the second step there. And then from there, you get into insights. And so we've got an intelligence platform with all sorts of functionality to monitor basket performance and indexes, new items, promotional, you name it, a whole long list of reports to take these millions of items that a client might be getting and condense that down into kind of the answers to questions that they have. And then from there, the next step is getting into actually taking action. And that could be via our price management module, where all of this data flows through based on a rule set that the client provides and a lot of progressive technologies to then make price recommendations on that for the retailer to execute on. Or in other instances, the action might be more of a trigger a store visit. So we do work where we might be monitoring out of stocks, using web data to manage out of stocks, and then we send somebody into the store to deal with the exceptions. So kind of at a high level, that's the framework of our solution. Yeah, and so at a foundational level, a lot of the data collections work that we've picked up over the years has come from work that clients were doing themselves with their own people. And when you don't have a dedicated team of people that are experts in collecting that data, you get some inconsistent results. And so that's one aspect of it. The other is a lot of the data that, as you said, a lot of the data we're collecting, the primary application has been price. But over the years, as we've kind of zoomed back and looked at what are the other applications of this data, is where we start working with other entities. And so we work with a lot of private label teams as we capture kind of all the private label items that a competitor has, and we can say here's the items that match to your assortment, here's items that are unique to you, and then here's the third bucket of items that are unique to the competitor. And so that data obviously then feeds into kind of their product development roadmap. We do quite a bit of work with operations teams, and that tends to be more in their own stores. And so whether that's helping with inventory, things like shelf tag compliance, making sure that the price on the shelf is consistent with the price in the POS, and other, getting into qualitative audits in these stores. And so, are the restrooms clean? Are certain displays, new displays up as they're supposed to be, as they've been planned for? How long do you have to wait in line to check out? So kind of a wide range of services, leveraging kind of both the web data that we collect, the in-store capabilities, and the expertise of our teams that do the audits. But, as I said before, like the quality and timeliness of the data coming in is the utmost importance, and that's where you have to start. We've got all sorts of validation and QA processes on the data that's flowing in, both from in-store and online. We see so much execution error, both online and in store. A lot of folks seem to think that web data is kind of the purest form of data because there's no human actually having to put a shelf tag up. But the reality of it is there is a human somewhere along the line that's having to enter the price of that item in. So, with all the incoming data, we look at it based on a historical perspective. What have we collected from that same store for this same price, as well as a broader perspective of what did we collect for this item across other retailers in other markets to kind of get a good sense of, is this an appropriate price for the item based on all this other information? Even with our in-store work, there's a validation step at the shelf that says, if a price is being reported that's outside of an expected variance, our research associate is prompted to take an image of that, and then that image flows through and is reviewed to make sure that again, it's an appropriate price. And more times than not, we find that the first price that they enter in is in fact the correct price. It just speaks to that volatility and/or execution in the store. So it's not one or the other, because there's a lot of technology involved in every aspect of what we do. But to the core of the question of, with our field team relying on employees versus a crowdsourced or a contractor solution, is the key differentiator. We're able to vet people before we hire them to make sure they understand this, that they have context. We train them. There's ongoing training and ongoing tracking of the work that's done. And because they're an employee, there's certainty that the requested work from a client is actually going to get done. There's a lot of work that we do, a lot of the work we do, especially for brands, where the execution, the threshold or the expectation for execution has gotten really low. And so they've become accustomed to 70% of jobs getting done. When they come to us, we're doing 99 or even 100% of the jobs, again, because we're assigning that work to our client, to our research associates in the field. And so it makes all the difference in the world. And again, we've got thousands of people across the US and Canada. We're doing a lot of these audits and store visits every week. And it's just that reliability factor. I think there's perhaps a time and a place for crowdsourced solutions in this space where exact locations don't matter, exact timing doesn't matter. I kind of take what I get. But for a lot of the more mission critical work that we do for our clients, having confidence that it was collected in the time window that it was supposed to, and it was in the store, the actual store that was requested by the client, becomes a real important component. And it's hard to do that without these folks being your actual employees. And so we've got a really unique solution there, especially as it relates to brands, in terms of monitoring out of stocks. And it goes back to the omnichannel focus that we have. So we're doing a lot of work where we're leveraging web data that's known to be a viable proxy to in-store, to monitor stock positions. And there's different ways we do that based on available information on different websites. But we use that, and then that data flows into our intelligence platform. And based on a rule set threshold that we work with the client to set, that will then trigger an in-store visit. And so whether that's, in some cases it's if it's showing out of stock, we want somebody to go in as soon as possible. In other cases, we look for trends. In other cases, we're ingesting sales data from the brand and identifying low performing stores and using that to trigger the in-store visit. So it's really a holistic approach of the efficiency of leveraging the data sets with our intelligence platform to do the monitoring and sort of initiate the signal that there might be an issue at the store. So instead of having to send a research associate to thousands of stores to see if there's a problem, we can monitor that much more efficiently and then send a person in on that small subset of stores where a signal has been elevated to say there's a problem. We talk a lot about insights without action is just anxiety. And so it starts from that point of we can collect all the data, it's accurate, it's timely, and then it's using the intelligence platform to filter the data down to what's most relevant, looking for exceptions. So from a pricing perspective, it might be a real-time alert that the client gets when a subset of 25 super KVI items exceeds a certain threshold that they've set relative to the competitor in that market, so they can have that information, and it's a very acute piece of information they can take action on. So it's and then similar to what I shared before, that can extend into in-store execution as well. And so it's that full circle solution of being able to provide the data, create the exceptions and the alerts based on all these different situations that a retailer or brand might be interested in, and then being able to kind of close the loop, either by taking action or providing the client with that very specific nugget of what action needs to be taken. It's amazing the amount of progressive technologies that goes into these solutions these days. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of subjectivity in decision making that isn't going to sit within an AI engine or any sort of algorithm, but sits in the head of the merchant or the buyer within the retailer or the brand. And so we look through the lens of a lot of the solutions as to where does a human in the loop need to go into that. And so whether that human might be somebody on the client side, or even we've got solutions on our side when it comes to product matching, where we can we use a lot of technology to kind of narrow down what is the best match for an item if there's not an exact UPC match. And then, based on a rule set, our team can help make it more of a subjective final decision. The technology has come a long way, but there's still, very nuanced pieces that really play right into that retailer or brand's competitive point of view. That's not going to be captured purely from a technology perspective, at least at this point in time. Who knows what's to come down the road, but it's we see a lot of this as important balance between the two. Yeah, we do a lot of work as it relates to omnichannel with our clients. I mean, typically what we find within a lot of retailers is, there's one team focused on in-store, another team focused on the web, and that could be both from a pricing and assortment, promotion perspective. And it's not uncommon that those two teams don't necessarily talk to one another. To your point, it's from a consumer perspective, it's pure omnichannel. I expect a seamless experience throughout. I might shop online and then actually go in store to make a purchase, or the other way around. But having those two connected, it becomes really important. And so, it generally starts with that conversation of showing the retailer sort of what's going on within their own world, where those differences are, and just learning more of what that represents and how their competitors are doing it. Oftentimes what we see is you have to get pretty high up in an organization to get to somebody that's truly focused on kind of that omni-channel experience. And in some cases, it's as high as the CEO. just the way some of these organizations are organized. And so that view is really important. And I think there's a continued maturation on that, especially within the grocery space. I mean, if you think about it, online grocery is not all that old. I mean, it was 16, 17, 18, where we really started to see it proliferate in a slow way. And then COVID obviously, kind of pushed the gas on it much more. And it's plateaued a bit, but it's a continued maturation of that process, and we'll continue to see that. And we certainly see more and more client organizations evolve to be thinking in more of that omni-channel perspective. It all starts with visibility. I mean, it's well known, sort of the constant evolution of own brands. Many years ago, it was the bottom shelf generic white label item. And there's just that continued evolution. And now, and with the better goods example that you mentioned, I mean, that's just a highly differentiated private brand. It might be the most differentiated own brand that we've seen in the grocery space in terms of how many of those items have a comparable item within the competitor set. And from a Walmart perspective, these items aren't focused on value. They're focused on in kind of the better for you categories, a lot of unique, kind of getting into more kind of gourmet type items. So really highly differentiated that's from a private brand or own brand perspective, but really starting to look much more in line with comparable items from a national brand perspective. So that first step is being able to provide visibility to that. We maintain a private label library of about 500,000 items that's updated regularly, fully attributed, and that becomes the key to then use our matching technologies to create those comparable matches based on a retailer's competitive point of view. Again, there's always some degree of subjectivity in there in terms of what is and what isn't a match. And then from there, we're able to provide competitive pricing in real time to clients with those converted items. So here's my item and relative to what's the competition. But then that data gets used throughout the organization, beyond pricing and kind of that short-term piece, but more long-term planning of understanding what does this retailer sell that I don't sell, and are these items I should be considering. And what's interesting is, we've long worked with our retail clients on private label programs like this. It's just recently that brands have really started coming around to the notion that they need to be more aware of what's going on from an own brand perspective. Because no longer are these own brands just on kind of a value paper towel or kind of more commodity driven item, but it's getting into much more diverse items and categories that much more aligns with national brands. And so it's a dynamic, ever expanding space, that's for sure. I think for starters, we'll continue to integrate more and more technologies to get to that, to move from kind of the raw data to an answer. One piece that's coming soon within our intelligence platform is an AI layer that sits on top of that data where the user can ask natural language questions to get a specific answer. And so instead of having to run a query, you could simply ask the question of, how many new items in this category were rolled out, across this retailer, across these multiple retailers in the last month, and you get a concise, quick answer on a question like that. So that's one example. And then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, we continue to evolve the breadth and depth of our in-store services and the technologies that are related to that. And so it's an ever evolving. I mean, we're at the heart, we're a services company. And so it often starts with sort of what's the problem statement that the client has, and how do we adapt, whether it's the data and or human resources, to be able to execute and solve that problem for the client. It all starts with, in terms of where to start, it would be, what is the white space that you see? What are the competitive questions or issues that you're dealing with? And it's always great when it starts with a question, because from there we can, we can leverage the data that we have. We can send somebody in the field, start answering those questions, and rather than spend months developing a scope, we can kind of jump right in and get some answers and use that to set the path of where we might go from there. In terms of what to expect in working with us, we've worked exclusively in the retail space, really the duration of our existence. So not only are we a data company and a web scraping company and an analytics company, but we bring the domain expertise of retail. And so there's a lot of nuance to that. We see a lot of other startups that come into the space that come in as more of a pure technology play, not have that nuanced understanding. And so the understanding of the time that a collection or a time that an in-store activity of the day actually really matters quite a bit. So we bring the understanding of private label. So it's not so much of a transactional relationship as a real strategic partnership, and how we can help solve problems and proactively provide insights that to questions that they're having, or questions that maybe they haven't asked yet, but it's right around the corner for them. And then at the end of the day, just operational excellence. You're only as good as what you can deliver. We've been doing this for a long time. We really understand the importance of timely and accurate, high quality data. And what we tell you we're going to do is what we're going to do. We've just got a long track record of that. And so just, eager to understand what problems people might be having and how we might be able to help solve them.